lobsters on me. There ain't no lobsters on me. There may be lobsters on some of you mobsters, but there ain't no lobsters on me. Oh, it ain't gonna rain no more, no more.
Hello, welcome everyone. I want to thank everybody for their time today. I know we got a nice group of people here, so we've got some really great content that we're really excited to introduce to you. We're going to learn about action thresholds today. We're going to show you the theory and a lot of takeaways, hopefully, as well as introduce how our software product specifically can help with that. My name is Brian Hendel. I am a co-founder of IPM Scoutek and a technology professional. And we're really thrilled to have Dan Killingsworth here today. He is the director of Entonology LLC Pest Management Solutions. His work focuses on developing practical and effective integrated pest management solutions, private pest control, public health, vector control, agricultural settings, with an emphasis on surveillance, identification, biocontrols, rationales, and process accountability. So Dan knows his stuff. And what we've seen with working with growers and IPM managers, some of the leading in the field is really action thresholds, as using it as a leading indicator, really creates guides for remediation strategies. So controlling outbreaks, adding a huge layer of crop protection. And last year, IPM Scoutek specifically, we've been developing a really powerful way to utilize action thresholds within our software, automatically visualize and compare pressures within the greenhouse to these action threshold limits to know when action needs to be taken within your facilities, and send alerts immediately to your team to see, okay, things are starting to get to a point where action needs to be taken now to limit damage. So like I said, we're really excited to have Dan today talk about how action thresholds really should be a vital part of your IPM strategy. That action thresholds are the best line of defense to control pest and disease pressures within your facility, and specifically how to set action thresholds to improve your treatment strategy. And by tracking pest pressures against these action thresholds, really being a powerful tool to guard against outbreaks. So we're going to hear from Dan. We're also going to hear at the end of Dan's talk, we're going to hear from Jadel, who is our chief engineer for IPM Scoutek. He's going to reveal action thresholds within our product specifically. This is something that we're releasing to the market in November. So we're really excited. We've been working hard on getting something that the industry needs and that we're excited to bring to the table. So Jadel is going to do a quick little demo of how that works, and that should hopefully build on Dan's experience. And ultimately, at the end of this, we're going to welcome questions. So there's a little Q&A tool in Zoom. So at any point during the talk, please, post your questions there. And at the end of the talk, we're going to look at those and we're going to try to answer those, whether it be me, Jadel, or Dan. So feel free to type at any point. Dan is here in person. Well, as in person you can get in Zoom. He has, for the sake of everybody's time and efficiency, recorded his talk. So I'm going to be playing PowerPoint slides that are recorded. So no, Dan is not a ventriloquist. It's actually, he's sitting there and we've got his sort of recorded version. So he'll be happy to engage you directly after the talk is finished. And of course, we're recording this. So at the end, we will be sending out a recording link. And so there's a lot of content here, a lot of notes, a lot of takeaways. I want to make sure that people don't need to feel like they're just having to jot everything down. So we'll send a recording and hopefully that can empower everyone with some great takeaways. So yeah, so let's get rolling here with Dan.
Thank you for the opportunity to present. My name is Dan Killingsworth with Entonology.
Oops.
Pest management strategies. Today we'll be discussing action thresholds for pest management, practical data tracking to avoid losses, how to increase your yields. Points to consider for action thresholds. We're going to review how action thresholds are a vital part of your IPM strategy. These action thresholds are your best line of defense to control pest and disease pressures. This requires understanding your workflow. Knowing how to set your action thresholds will improve your treatment strategy. So we're going to be doing a little bit of math here. Basic math, but fundamental to success. And then tracking pest pressures against action thresholds will guard against outbreaks. We have to know where the pest populations are and how they're trending. Action threshold is a concept that fits within the principles of integrated pest management, or IPM. So let's define that first. You'll find any number of long drawn out definitions for IPM. This one is fairly succinct from the Integrated Pest Management Center in the United States. So integrated pest management, it's a science-based, sustainable decision-making process that uses information on pest biology, environmental data, and technology to manage pest damage in a way that minimizes both economic costs and risk to people, property, and the environment. And that's still a mouthful, but the way I like to break it down is that this whole concept is designed to promote mindfulness of impacts for each input into your system, and based on whatever set of values that fits whatever model you're trying to work under. And it's informed through systematically derived feedback data. You have to continually test your system to determine where you are in the pest management game. So for defining action threshold, this is often used interchangeably with economic threshold. You'll see both. But it really is a definition within a definition. So first we have economic injury level, and so that's the smallest number of pests that are causing plant injury and leading to loss of yield that equals the cost of your pest management strategy. So loss of yield is crop specific, and that's going to vary depending on the crop and the farm. Blemished flowers or ornamentals may not bring saleable market value, whereas a blemished fruit or vegetable may be able to be relegated to food processing or some other product. Facility management sets those standards, and that's to be determined in-house. But your economic threshold, that's the pest density where control methods should be employed to suppress a population from reaching the economic injury level. And that is a matter of understanding your work processes. So your pest surveillance and your cost of pest control weighed against the value of marketable yields. Those are the driving factors to determine your pest thresholds. This is not a simple solution, but it is determined by trial and error. So you have to systematically test one variable against your control group. So this is a scientific principle, and it has to work within your facility. If you make 3 and 4 changes and then try to decipher exactly what helped your pest management issues or what may have hurt them, you've introduced too many variables without control, and it's difficult to decipher exactly what worked for you. So it requires a level of patience and determination to just make the one simple change. Perhaps it's changing the concentration of your product or increasing the frequency of your treatments. Whatever it is, one change at a time. Ultimately, what we're determining is how good is good enough. That's the question at hand. When discussing pest management issues, I like to take IPM a step or two further to what I call IP3M. It's integrated people, process, and pest management. Because it is the people and the processes that promote pest issues, but fortunately, it's the people and processes that also come up with the solutions. So this really is about a fundamental understanding of the tasks and duties assigned to every person within the facility, and to recognizing the reasons behind your pest issues and then the solutions for controlling them. And most importantly, in regards to action thresholds, the financial implications of those actions. What are your costs of inputs? Factors crucial to IPM success. First and foremost, identification of pest problems. We're going to review scouting through surveillance versus by survey. Then timeliness of discovery all boils down to the quality of your scouting team. Early detection always minimizes your pain and your costs. Time required to make decisions requires a knowledge of your tools available and those costs. Time required for actionable response is an understanding of your team and their tasks. Are these processes mapped out properly? And then ability to evaluate success of control methods is managing through metrics. This is all about reporting and reading those reports and following through. For identification of pest problems, you have methods like surveillance versus survey. Now, a survey is a one-time evaluation of collected data and provides a snapshot of the situation. It doesn't give you a feel for increasing or decreasing populations or even overall density of pest pressures. Surveillance, on the other hand, is a series of surveys over time that are evaluated sequentially to give a more in-depth overview of trends and tendencies. When you do those surveys, they need to be done the same way, by the same standards each time to give you a real feel for what's happening. And only through these diligent surveillance methods can you collect the data to make sufficient reporting usable. Surveillance reporting provides a real-time actionable information that allows for things like heat maps, for pinpointing troubles, and for visualizing trends. Recognizing those trends becomes the most powerful predictive tool at your disposal for anticipating pest pressures as well as for discovering avenues for solutions. In the realm of action thresholds, this is one of the most important components here. Again, a little bit of math that we're going to review. But your pest management decisions should be based on established pest counts. And how you go about those counts is based on different criteria for the needs of your facility or the requirements of the crop or the type of pest that is at hand. Several ways to go about it. You can count the number of pests per designated area, square meter or square foot, number of pests per plant, or the bang board, or hanging a sheet underneath and shaking your crop. Number of pests per monitoring device, whether sticky board, pheromone trap, bait traps, however. And then the presence of a particular life stage of a pest, such as adult winged aphid, is an indicator of a real problem that you need to address immediately, and that would set off an action threshold. And then you might have a farm or crop specific in-house metric that's particular to that facility, and that would kick off another treatment. I'd like to take a little time here to review your scouting team and providing adequate time for effective scouting. Too often I've been at a facility where the IPM team member or even the whole team was pulled from the scouting or treatment duties and asked to assist with other cultivation duties such as maintenance or manicure or harvest, what have you. It's important to emphasize that scouting is the frontline effort to evaluate the state of your cultivation facility. The scouts tend to be detail-oriented people and have a gift for discovering problems and an aptitude for providing solutions. I mean, they were hired on because of that aptitude, and they need to be given the time to have eyes on the plants. The more time they're in the plants, the more data they'll be able to collect, and the better off the facility is. So also while scouting for pests and disease, irrigation issues, fertigation issues, lighting and ventilation challenges are also discovered in a timely fashion. All of these roll into things that affect your yield. It tends to be the scouts that find those problems and at least alert somebody that those issues are happening. So oftentimes you'll see a large facility with only 1 or 2 scouts, and perhaps it's not valued as much as it should be because they're on a regular spray regimen that's on a schedule versus being based on pest pressures. But that's up to the facility to decide. But all that said, scouting is essential to an IPM program, and those scouts need the time to do the work. Once a pest problem has been evaluated and it's determined that some action perhaps should be taken, it's important to be able to make quick decisions as to whether that should move forward. That requires a knowledge of the tools available and the costs for using those tools. So in the realm of beneficial arthropods, I'm a big fan of biocontrols, but it is necessary to evaluate the effectiveness to your cost of control. Are the beneficials being dispersed properly? Are they being dispersed at a rate that's going to maintain a suppression of your pest populations? Because it's difficult once infestation gets high enough for beneficials to control a heavy infestation. Beneficials really are about suppressing populations from clean material at the beginning of a process, difficult once a pest population is established. And so what are your quarantine efforts? What kind of materials coming in? What kind of pests are on the new material? And do you have a plan for that? Because if you're not being mindful of that, your beneficials may be overcome and not be able to keep you under control. And they're very expensive. They can be if they're not put out at a proper rate. So your chemical treatments. This is essential to recognize the costs per gallon or liter of finished mixed product, and recognize that often labels have a low, medium, and high rate, and then it's worth working those costs out as well. So how you're putting your product out, evaluating your sprayer versus a fogger. Foggers are great. I'm a big advocate of foggers, but not every crop works with a fogging system. You might have younger crop right next to an older crop that could maybe not be able to handle the fogging, the velocity of air going over it, or for whatever reason. But recognizing your cost of finished product in a fogger and the amount of square footage or square meters that it covers versus your sprayer. And so coverage per volume of product must be evaluated. And so eventually you want to evaluate your labor costs. How much time does it take to do that? And eventually you end up with a cost of treatment per square foot or square meter. That's the fundamental number you need as a component of action thresholds. So knowledge of these costs allows for quick decisions when an infestation is discovered. This is a generalized map. Happens to be cannabis. We came in, there was a heavy root aphid infestation throughout the facility. And so this was just a sketch up of some inputs over the timeline, potential inputs. And so from day 0 to day 81, everything above the line is a foliar application. Everything below the line is on or in the soil to the different stages: clones, veg, flower. So mapping out this process, recognizing that these are when the inputs are going to happen or could happen, recognizing the cost of each input, and being ready to make a shift if the scouting warrants it. So here at day 45, we've got, for example, root scouting assess for follow-up for drench rates. And so it could be that we've got the root aphids under control and perhaps we've got a few little less drenches, and so that you're going to reduce your costs over that time, but that's all based on scouting. So mapping this out is essential to being able to visualize exactly what you're looking at down the road. Understanding the time required for an actionable response requires an understanding of your team and their tasks. So, are the team leaders provided the information and staffing necessary to complete all the duties safely and efficiently in accordance with labor laws, label laws, and understanding standard operating procedures and following them? It's worth pointing out that chemical applications are one of the largest liabilities of the indoor greenhouse facility, and minimizing those applications as much as possible is a worthwhile venture, both for health reasons, but also on costs. And so this is where scouting really helps you out. Evaluating the crop on a regular basis, you can eliminate a few treatments, all the better. Posting schedules for duties for all your team members, daily, weekly, monthly, on calendars that are visible in the workspace so that everyone is aware and accountable for their assigned responsibilities. Too often I'll ask a question whether a treatment was done on such and such a date, and it's not in the spray logs, or they have to go and ask 3 and 4 questions and it's kind of still a question mark, or even what's to be done for the day. They are past lunchtime and they're still not sure exactly what they're going to do for treatments for that day, if they're going to do treatments at all. This requires a level of communication between management and area leaders, team members, especially when your pest pressures are increasing, and those decisions need to be made quickly to resolve the issue. I find it very beneficial to have a task calendar. This is what I was talking about, having posted in your workspace, where you have a daily, weekly accountable log to determine who's working, who's doing what task, and as far as treatments go, what the label requirements are for that particular treatment per finished gallon, so that there's no questions. Too often we rely on people's memory, but these things change. The labels actually change, and it's not worth messing it up if the implications are too high. So just write it out, have it out there visible for everyone to see. Knowing what team members are there, I always advocate planning for the next day. So knowing who's going to be doing what the next day, so that no one's asking questions in the morning first thing. They know right what their tasks are, whether they're scouting, watering, feeding. Sanitation is a large part of an IPM process, so that your sanitation processes are not cross-contaminating other issues. Sanitation is very important. And then at the bottom of that calendar there, I have a QA sign off. Someone on the quality assurance team makes certain that those assigned duties were actually completed that day, and if not, exactly why. It might be a totally justifiable reason, but it needs to be advertised as to why that wasn't done. For an ability to evaluate success of your control methods for managing pest pressures, you really have to manage through metrics. And this is reporting from scouting and other measurable outlets such as plant kill tags, harvest weights, total yield. These provide various ways of evaluating pest disease and cultivation management success. So there's a tendency when pest pressures are up and plants die off that all those plants are categorized as dead due to pest pressures, when you still have underwatering, maybe over fertilization, perhaps burned by the lights, and other issues that it all tends to get lumped into killed by pests. And if you can break those metrics out and really truly track them for what they are, that way you're not tipping the scale in your action thresholds, so that it might not truly be about pest pressures, but about some other issue, underwatering, dry down, that type of thing. So you want to get a true number based on the number of plants lost due to pests, that kind of thing. And so it's important to track what works as well as areas of concern that may require attention in future crops. So my little takeaway here is that you want to copy your successes and then manage for your failures. I appreciate your time today. My take-home message here for scouting and for determining action thresholds is that your agronomic input considerations should be based on real-time feedback data. What is the farm telling you? This only works if the data is managed and reported properly. IPM Scoutek is the tool to do just that. So thank you for your time and attention. It's been my pleasure.
Awesome, Dan. Thank you for that. Obviously, tons of takeaways, tons of content. The tools and knowledge, I think, coming out of Dan's brain, like he said, is really contingent on having the data available to make those decisions. So we're going to show you just what we've done with part of our product, IPM Scoutek, dealing with action thresholds specifically. We're not going to do a full demo, but we want to focus on what software can achieve with this really powerful approach to managing pest pressures. So I'm going to have our chief engineer, Jadel, come in and give a demo of just those components of our system here.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Excited to be here. We've been working really hard on Scoutek 2.0, and I'm excited to get to show a little bit of a preview here. So I think pretty much everybody on the call is familiar with Scoutek, so we're not going to go through the whole thing, but I am going to start by building a greenhouse that we can put some of these thresholds into. So this will just be a new test greenhouse, and we'll say it's 20 acres, and then we'll go ahead and we'll put in an address and a location. Now let's go along here, and here we can set just as a quick reminder, some of the labels here. I'll go ahead and change that, maybe just 4 houses. We'll advance, and the rows per house, but maybe these aren't rows, maybe these are more like benches, and we're actually going to disable the sides. One of the things with the old version of Scoutek is that there's always a row with 2 sides. At this point, what we're going to do is be able to disable that, and then maybe there's a few more benches per house. So it might start to look something like that. 4 houses and 7 benches per house gives us something like this. We can still make those disabled, and then go ahead and advance to the next one. And now here, maybe these are actually tables, and now maybe there are 10 tables from the aisle to the wall in these benches. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And so here's our configuration, new greenhouse, up and running. Now, within that new greenhouse, let's take a quick look at the setup. So first, all observations go on plants. So let's go ahead and put some plants inside the greenhouse. You could still do the whole entire thing in one giant plant if you so choose, or you can flip over to poly, of course, and here's where it gets really interesting. So let's say we have some ground flowers in this house, and this one as well. But let's say that there are some potted flowers over here in the second house. So let's go ahead and put these here. And now there are some hanging baskets, but only specific tables worth. So now we're going to let you drill down and put different plants at different parts of the greenhouse itself. So you can get really detailed now and put the exact plant you want in each table, and you can blend them all together and do all kinds of different things. So it's very handy, very convenient, and allows a far greater level of granularity than we did in the first version. So what this is going to do is allow you to get in now and make observations on different plants on each table within each of your rows to allow for specific thresholds on each of those. So let's take a look now at what that looks like really quickly. I go back into here, and then we'll go into our edit thresholds. So let's go there. And this is where we get to decide which pests are going to be available in this greenhouse for observation. So let's go ahead and pick an aphid, and here's where you get to set those thresholds. So the greenhouse we just created is 20 acres with 25 benches, the 10 tables, and there's one side. So that means that there's actually 250 possible aphid observations in this greenhouse. So we're going to say, for low, medium, and high, when would you like to see a warning in our system? What is your action threshold is what this is really asking. So if we said maybe at 25%, that's 62 observations. And then this one's at 15, that's 37. And then this one, maybe 5, is 12 observations. And so you have a really fine grain level of control. You can just adjust these numbers to whatever you need. You can actually do fractions if you want to get really specific. And then that's it. You just set them like that. Now maybe we're going to pick another one. Cabbage looper is an interesting one because probably we don't want to see this many. So probably for something like cabbage looper, we're going to want these warnings to be fired off after just a single observation. So we allow that. If you select a 0, or if you enter in a 0, we're going to say give us these warnings after one observation. And then maybe there's a pest in your greenhouse that you don't actually care about the thresholds. So we allow you to set that to off as well. And now you can just save those. And now you have your action threshold set for this greenhouse. So let's imagine that the greenhouse is now set up. Your scouts are out there scouting. Let's take a look at what that is going to look like once you're collecting some data and you can see a whole bunch of observations coming in. Let's flip over to here and take a look at our new greenhouse dashboard. So for those of you familiar with the system, you're going to see quite a few new cards here. We're going to show your application costs on a drilling it down, right? We know how big the greenhouse is, right? So we're going to do some math for you, figure out how much you've spent on sprays, beneficials, and then break it down to the per meter square or per square foot, as the case may be. Your scouting activity will be here. But really what we want to talk about today is the action threshold warning. So there's going to be a whole new card, and anytime your observations violate those settings that we just set, we're going to put a little tile here that you can hover over and find out exactly what your observations to threshold ratio is. So in this case, it's exceeding the warnings you wanted to have set up. So you'll see these exclamation points and warnings being thrown. Now on a per pest basis, you'll see that this card now also has a whole section for threshold warnings and violations. So it's going to get called out again right there. And then in the chart itself, you'll see the threshold lines that you established by setting those threshold values, and then your observations against those lines. So you can see immediately at a glance if you're violating them. Now we're collecting all this data. Let's see if there's even more detail available by clicking on the pest itself. So we're going to drill down now even further into, in this case, whitefly, and get a little bit more insights. So you can see in the top left, we're going to throw up this pressure card, and here again, a violation of the threshold warnings. So those are going to be loud and proud displayed right there at a glance, easy to see, easy to read. We've added quite a few new things that we're going to show. One thing I'm really excited about we're working on right now is this heat map over here. So as you start to accumulate, in this case, whitefly observations in this greenhouse, you'll start to see these dots appearing as those observations move from low to medium to high. You'll start to see those move around, change colors. It'll be very interesting. A different way of looking at your data that's never been available through any other system. So there's a lot more data available on this Pest Insight page. As you can see, if we scroll down a little bit, we're going to show again, the threshold warning levels that you decide to set up as you go. One thing I wanted to point out is that they're changing. So the one screen that I showed you where you can edit those thresholds, you could do that at any point. So a grow season might last all throughout the year. So you can go ahead and in the spring set one threshold level where you'll see these warnings, and then maybe as the summer rolls on, you want to change where you see those warnings. So you can go in and make those changes. So these charts will show you whatever you set them at, and then if you change them, it will move, and you can do that as many times as you'd like moving forward. So we're collecting all this data, showing you where you are in relation to your thresholds. Down here again, big warnings if you violate those threshold levels. And we're surfacing all the interesting more property information that your scouts are collecting. So week by week version, touch quickly on the sticky card information that's being collected. Anyway, there's a whole lot of things in Scoutek 2.0 that we're really excited to get in your hands. We think you're going to love it. It's going to be available later this year. Can't wait to show it to you.
Awesome, Jadel. Thank you. Like we were mentioning, a lot of work having gone into that with obviously feedback from our farm partners, growers, IPM managers, to make sure that we're building something that the industry needs. So action thresholds on the floor with the team, baked into the culture, along with proper software and systems, we think is going to be a game changer for the industry. And we're really, really excited to be a part of that. So we're going to look at questions here in a second. I just wanted to mention we have a link here. If anybody's interested to know more, we created a link, ipmscoutek.com/AT for action threshold. Asks a couple of questions about what you'd like to know, and we're planning on releasing white papers and more information and actionable information for growers. And if you're interested in getting that collateral for free, go to that link, sign up. We will keep you posted as to the resources available to really help you with action thresholds in your facility. And Dan Killingsworth obviously did a great job. Really thank you, Dan. His contact information is down there as well. So anyone interested in reaching out to Dan, feel free, go directly. He's a fantastic resource. And Jadel, I see a chat and QA. Is there anything we want to?
Yeah, 3 great questions have come in here, so I'd be happy to speak to each of them. In the chat, there was a great question about editing the greenhouse layout that were created, and maybe there was an error in the layout itself. So the construction of a greenhouse in the system is actually rather complicated, and allowing a fundamental edit to the layout itself isn't going to be possible in 2.0. But great question. Hopefully we can catch those early enough that we don't have lots of observations going into them before the correction is necessary. If we catch them early enough, we might need to rebuild it. But as you can see, as I added that greenhouse, even with single side and customization, it didn't take more than a couple minutes. So hopefully we can catch those errors early. But no editing will be possible moving forward. And a great question from John. If the pest isn't listed, can it be added after the fact? And yes, that's something we do see frequently. And so you might go in, set up some pests, edit all your thresholds, get it all exactly as you like, and then realize that there's one missing. And so we definitely allow you to go in, add that. And if you forgot it, we're actually going to pop up a little bit of a reminder that says, hey, you added this pest but haven't set the threshold yet. Click here to make that really, really fast. Actually, we just show you right on the screen right there, so you don't even have to go into a deeper spot. Great question there. There was also a question about the heat map that we are so excited to get in your hands. The heat map itself is actually based on the observations your scouts make. So it's not anything GPS based. It's not anything that you have to enter in manually or anything like that. You will actually do nothing different from the usage of IPM Scoutek. Your scouts are just out there making observations. And what we've been able to do is collect that data and then compile it down into like a heat map friendly format. So no actions necessary. It's going to work on all your past greenhouses. It's just going to be there from what you have with no changes necessary to your scouting practices or any new technologies needed.
And to be clear, for those of you on the call who maybe are not familiar with Scoutek, what Jadel was showing you is the growers portal, the IPM managers portal. There's a tablet-based application being used in the scouts by the scouts in the field to do the data collection. So none of that changes. It's the same easy process. We're just taking that data and presenting it in a different way on the management reporting side. So it's integrated directly with the scouts data intake.
Exactly. Another great question. Further to what I was talking about, how you can't edit the layout of a greenhouse, but one thing you can edit are the plants. So if you do have a plant die or something and you would like to replant that specific area, you can go into the settings and you can adjust the plants. So while you can't change the layout, you can change what's there itself. And so you don't have to recreate the farm or go through the process. Now, we do have some tricks up our sleeve for letting you recreate farms really, really easily if the layout stays the same. We have a cloning process that makes that just a one-click process. But in the case of changing plants, you don't actually need to do that.
Great. Let's see.
Hold on, a couple more questions still pouring in, which is great to see. Will the 2.0 version allow the iPad to be more compatible for scouting? The current version limits what we can do on the iPad without the computer setting sprays. Yes, so with 2.0, we're focused a lot on action thresholds. But on our roadmap, on the next version, we are going to be more focused on applications from the scouting app itself. We have a lot of great ideas in the hopper. So while 2.0 is not going to offer the ability to put some beneficials out or sprays out from the scouting app itself, that is something that we've heard and that we love that idea, and we are going to be working on that after. Great question about 2.0 and when that's coming up. We're working really hard on it right now. We're going to have that in your hands later this year. As for moving tables around, we've got a question about movement in greenhouses themselves. So we do have a few ways to handle that. There's not really a way to click and drag things around in the greenhouse building interface itself. So not really a physical movement, but what we found works with some of our farms is having their scouts use the names of the rows more so than the position on the iPad. So when it comes to choose what table that they're scouting, instead of just going to the quote unquote physical location on the iPad itself, they read the names of the tables and then find where it is. So that gives you the freedom to move it around the facility, and the scout's job at that point is just to find the label and then the observations there. And yes, 2.0 is not going to be anything that requires special reconfiguration or anything. When the time comes for you to receive 2.0, you'll just update your iPad apps just as you usually do from the App Store, and your web app itself will just be automatically converted over. There'll be no action on your part, with the exception of your action thresholds. So we'll be in touch. We're going to reach out to each of you individually who already have your accounts set up, and we're going to ask you what would you like to use for the threshold values for the pests you have in active greenhouses right now. It'll just be a way that we can help seed the database a little bit to save you a little bit of time and make the transition to 2.0 a little more seamless.
And just to be clear, we are on track to release this version in November. We have our closest greenhouse partners already scheduled in mid-November to kind of get a white glove service treatment of this version. So it's going to become publicly available definitely before the end of the month. So right now we're literally just wrapping up, doing some final testing, and pretty much ready to rock. So we're extremely excited about that.
No doubt, no doubt. There was a really good question about uploading data from the iPads, and so I do want to speak to that a little bit because the iPads themselves can collect all the data offline, and then as soon as they get an internet connection, they can sync that data back up. And so we have a lot of farms actually that do this intentionally, just flip into airplane mode. They get a lot better battery life that way, so they give their scouts the iPad. They go off, do their scouting in airplane mode, and then come back on a lunch break, and then toggle it back to the connection. Wi-Fi is reestablished, data is uploaded, and then immediately it all appears in the dashboards. So an internet connection is required for syncing, but not for the observations themselves. We fully support offline mode. These are some great questions. Awesome. Great to hear.
So yeah, we're approaching the end here. So thank you, everyone. I know everybody's extremely busy right now. It was really appreciated. If you're interested, like I said, please check out that link. Register will get you all the information that we're producing, all the collateral. And if you're interested in a demo, we'd be more than happy to show that to you. Otherwise, we really appreciate everyone's time. So stay tuned. We're going to be doing more of these, and we hope that there's some serious takeaways to bring back to your facilities. And again, we're going to take this version of the recorded version of this event, and we're going to send it to everyone who joined. So if you're interested in reviewing anything that Dan or Jadel was mentioning, it will be made available to you. And again, really appreciate everyone's time. And Dan is here for you. We're here for you if we can help in any way. So appreciate it. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jadelle. And again, everyone who joined us today. Really appreciate it.